Hi, I'm Quinn and I'm autistic, and this is Autistic. I'd be very hesitant to describe what I make here as art, but if I broaden the definition to include myself, then sometimes my life directly imitates my art. Whilst I'm in the midst of writing about some very specific areas of autistic life, I find myself dealing with the exact same things in my own life. Last week, I listed 5 of the most common autistic complaints about, well, life in general. And as if to prove just how commonplace they are, I got caught up in a couple of them myself during the week. Whilst making a video that talked at length about the frustration of autistic questions being misunderstood, I asked someone a question that got badly misunderstood. What started as a straightforward run-of-the-mill conversation escalated into a confusing mess involving multiple parties. Well, I can't think of a better time to take a look at just why it is that autistic questions so often lead to unforeseen consequences, shall we call them? So, if you're in the mood for a natter, why not pour yourself a cup of something tasty and warming, find a comfy spot to plonk your bot, and join me as we try to find out what happens when autistic questions go wrong. So, what happened last week? Regular viewers know that I'm always sat down in my videos for a reason. Since my 20s, I've had arthritis in my spine, which makes walking and standing up difficult and painful, so I don't do either unless I have to. For the last 12 years or so, I've been on biologic drugs, fortnightly injections, which are, quite frankly, a miracle for me. My mobility is practically zero without them, so I couldn't function. It's as simple as that. If I had any doubts about that, then the last few months would have wiped them out, because I've been in the process of changing from one biologic drug to another, which has meant flushing the first one out of my system and starting the new one in the hospital by infusion before I start injecting at home again. Now, these biologics are fiddly and expensive drugs. Thank God for the NHS, because I have friends in the US and other countries who pay thousands for theirs, if they can afford them. But they also need careful handling. They have to be kept refrigerated until use, so the NHS contracts third-party companies to do the deliveries in refrigerated vehicles on a staggered schedule, and it was that third-party courier where the confusion started. One afternoon last week, whilst I was working on the 5 pains in my autistic arse video, I got a phone call out of the blue. Now, if you're autistic, it's a fair bet that you either loathe receiving unexpected phone calls with a passion, or you're that one who wonders if you're the only autist who doesn't mind them. To them, you're not alone. There are quite a few of you actually, but I'm not one of you, I'm afraid. Unexpected phone calls are only really beaten into second place by unexpected visitors. They completely throw me off my stride, especially if I'm in the middle of something. When I'm working on a video, whatever stage of production I'm at, I spend a lot of time in that autistomatic zone, monotropically on task, so it was a bad time to catch me. They rang my cell phone, so at least I could see that the caller was the meds delivery company, so I let it ring a couple of times whilst I struggled to code switch into grown-up conversation mode, so I could deal with them. I just had the first lot of those meds delivered in the morning, so maybe it was a follow-up call.
How satisfied were you with the bloke who handed you the plastic bag and asked you if you knew it was to go straight in the fridge? Would you say he was more rhubarb or Ford Cortina?
But no. The young-sounding woman introduced herself and said she had to book in a nurse to supervise my first injection. OK, thought I. No worries. I remember a nurse coming round to coach me through the first time 12 years ago, so it must be part of the process. She asked what date I'm due to start and booked a nurse to come round on the day. I wrote it down in the diary and the call was wrapping up when she asked me if I had any questions, and it all went pear-shaped. Actually, yes, just the one, but it might sound a bit silly. What's the nurse coming round for?
It's to show you how to store the injections, how to administer them correctly, and how to dispose of them safely afterwards.
Oh, well, I've already been on very similar injections for the last 12 years or so. So I know all that stuff already, unless something's changed.
Well, it's not mandatory. You don't have to have the nurse round if you don't want to.
It's not that I mind. I'm really not bothered either way. But if the only reason is to show me the process, it seems like a wasted journey. Unless there's another reason for a nurse to be present, is there?
If you don't want the nurse's visit, I can cancel it for you. It's a courtesy service, so it isn't mandatory.
But is it about more than just teaching me what to do? Sadly, the seeds of confusion were already sown. Logically, if the nurse was only coming to show me the ropes with a different but practically identical injection regime, then it would be a waste of everybody's time, given I've already done it in excess of 300 times. But I'd not had any answers to my supplementary questions. Had anything changed since I was last taught? Was there any other reason for the nurse to be present? But my asking only confused the matter. I wasn't expecting the nurse visit because I'd already been told a number of times at the hospital that my injections would work the exact same way as my last ones, so nothing would really change in that respect, hence why I asked. I expected to be told there was another reason for the nurse needing to be there. But I didn't seem to be getting an answer so much as I felt as I was being led down a path that would eventually lead to the nurse appointment being cancelled. Presumably, nothing had changed with the injection regime, and there was no other reason for the nurse to attend. Go forward a couple of days, and I get another unexpected phone call, this time from a guy at the hospital.
You cancelled your nurse's appointment. Why did you cancel it?
Well, I don't need any instruction on the injections themselves, because I've been on similar ones for years already. But if there's another reason for the nurse to be there, then by all means I'll make the booking. Not fussed either way, really. I just want it done properly.
Oh, but it's not just there to teach you how to inject. There's more to it. We want you to be supervised the first time you inject at home. It's important. What if you have an allergic reaction?
I'm feeling a little confused by this point, doubting myself in particular. Did I somehow misunderstand the woman from the courier? Did she tell me about the reaction thing and I missed it? Or blanked it? No. I'm sure I'd have remembered that. But then she'd already established that I'd had my 2 infusions before starting the jabs, so maybe she thought that made a difference. Maybe she thought that meant the allergy thing was covered. It was an exercise of cognitive empathy, an attempt to put myself in her shoes and try to work out why she'd not mentioned the precautionary nature of the visit when she called me. That's when I made my second mistake. I asked this guy the question I'd just thought of. Is an allergic reaction likely at this stage, after having had the 2 infusions? Maybe that's why she didn't mention it on the phone? But if it's wise to have the nurse present, then please go ahead.
Well, you don't have to have it if you don't want it. And I suppose if you've had the infusions, you're very unlikely to have a reaction. So if you're sure you don't want the nurse visit, but I have to check, you see.
No, I'm not sure, because I'm not the expert, so I'll follow your recommendation. But the nurse remained cancelled. Until the next day, when I got another call, this time from the clinician who changed my drugs in the first place. Why did I cancel the nurse? Well, I didn't actually. I asked a couple of questions, and each time someone else made the choice for me as if I'd asked them to. I'm very lucky that the clinical team who look after me at rheumatology here are pretty good on the whole with neurodivergent patients. I'm not the only one who's disclosed to them and received respectful responses and meaningful action too. This particular specialist has been remarkably flexible in understanding how an autistic patient might not give the same feedback as they'd expect for a given set of symptoms. And after a few minutes of me explaining what happened, they thankfully understood where the confusion started. The long and the short of it is, I really should have the nurse present because there's a small but measurable risk that I might react badly to the first injection, even after the infusions. This is thankfully a story without major consequence. It's just a confusion, but a really messy and avoidable one. If I hadn't asked the question, hadn't asked why the nurse had to come round, none of the confusion would have happened. 2 more people wouldn't have phoned me to check on it, and I wouldn't have had to explain myself over and over again. Plenty of inconvenience, but nobody's got hurt this time. But that's not always the case. So what went wrong? How did we end up with so much confusion? 2 separate people made the same wrong assumption about the questions I asked them. They took my questions to be indirect statements of intent, when they were in reality just honest pleas for additional information. I wasn't hinting that I'd rather not have a nurse round. I just wanted to know what they were coming around for. I genuinely wanted more information so I knew what to expect. That's all. But that's not how it was taken. From the moment I asked the first question, the young woman did her absolute best to be helpful and do what she thought I wanted, but she made the wrong assumption about what that was. I wanted an answer to what I thought was an obvious question in the circumstances, not for her to cancel the booking. She was doing me a favour by saving me an inconvenience that I wasn't actually complaining about. But somehow, what I kept saying and what she was hearing didn't seem to get in line with each other, and the call ended with her reassuring me that a more or less pointless appointment had been cancelled. But pretty much the same misunderstanding seemed to happen with the guy who called me next from the hospital admin. He seemed to know more about the process than the woman from the courier company, but even he seemed to be under the impression that I'd rather not have the nurse round, and came to the same conclusion as her. Again, I felt it was being decided for me rather than my questions being answered. I don't know what the risks are. That's what doctors and clinics are for. So why don't you clinical guys tell me? Now, I did get my answers in the end, but not in the slightest bit directly, and I don't know how many people got stressed in the meantime. The guy who rang me from the hospital team sounded pretty worried and confused at first, so clearly my decision had ruffled some feathers. Did the young woman who cancelled it get a rollicking too before they called me back? There's no doubt in my mind that if I hadn't asked the question, the nurse would have come round anyway, nobody would have got stressed, including me, plus I wouldn't have had to field all the extra phone calls. I'm not saying I shouldn't have asked the questions, but there's also little I can do to make strangers on a phone understand that a question is just a question and not a hint. Farcical situations like this are the bread and butter of autistic life. I feel more comfortable talking about this question gone wrong because the consequences were relatively benign compared to most. But questions being misunderstood is a huge problem for autistic people in general, and the consequences can be devastating. The problem always comes from the same source. Other people, usually non-autistic folks, reading meaning into questions that wasn't put there by us. In the case of my storm in a teacup, me asking after the purpose of the nurse's visit seemed to plant the idea that I didn't want it in the woman's mind. From then on, she seemed to think she was helping me by making that possible. She really thought she was doing a good thing, I'm sure of it. And I think the same applies to the guy who followed up from the hospital. He was trying to help, but it was also based on a fallacy. He thought I wanted a reason not to see the nurse, even though I was trying to tell him I was on the fence and needed more info to help me choose. Where the communication issue stems from is, in my view, a fundamental difference in the way we interpret questions. In general, when someone autistic asks a question, it's because we're seeking information. We have a gap in our knowledge which is preventing us from acting or making a decision, and we want to clear it up. But that's all it is. We don't, as a rule, use questions as a way of disguising statements to make them more palatable, less embarrassing, or to disguise our motivation. I've spent many an hour explaining why autistic black and white thinking is for the most part nonsense. But if there is something that's pretty black and white about us, it's the way we seek information. Most of us just go straight to the point and ask. No tiptoeing around the outskirts or testing the waters first. We jump in feet first and ask the question, and it catches people off guard sometimes. As my good friend Mike pointed out recently, cultural differences can definitely play a part in this too. It's quite possible that the silly confusion I had over the last week wouldn't have happened in a culture that was more direct on the whole than we are here in England. Even within the British Isles, you'll find big differences in how direct local people are with each other and how willing they are to make assumptions about people. But there are some questions that seem to go down badly everywhere. Usually questions that begin with why or how, like, why did that happen? Or how did you come to that decision? My example might well be the result of two people's excessive politeness, an overarching desire to be helpful by not firing questions back at me and trying to do what they thought I wanted. But nobody's being polite when they react badly to one of our whys or hows. I've lost count of how many arguments, fallings out, or just uncomfortable silences I've caused by asking someone to explain themselves in a way I can understand. I explained a long time ago how autistic questions frequently get misinterpreted as demand avoidance, very often when we ask somebody a why or a how. It happens to me when I need context to understand a request. It's part of that veracity thing I keep talking about, the heightened need for consistency, reliability, and predictability that's evident in so many autistic traits. Sometimes I need to know more about what I'm asked to do or to reveal, or why I'm being asked to do it, before I can commit. I may not even need a complete answer there and then. Maybe a simple, "I'll tell you later" would suffice. But all too often, that's not the reaction on offer. All too often, all we get is intense annoyance. I mean, no, we don't get it all the time, and certainly not from everyone, but we get it way more than other folks do, because other folks don't ask the sort of questions autistic people usually do. More than once, I've been accused of starting something because I asked someone why they were doing A rather than B when B seemed to make more sense. I more or less destroyed a past relationship by asking how my girlfriend came to a series of disastrous decisions over a course of months. And I don't know how many jobs I've soured by asking about moral or ethical implications of the company's practices. Every one of those people assumed that my question was motivated by something that hadn't even crossed my mind. Criticism, insult, laziness, insubordination. Never anything nice. When I ask someone why they did something, they almost always assume that I'm berating them or arguing against their choices, when in reality I'm genuinely asking, why did they do that? I genuinely don't know, but I believe there must be a reason, so I'm seeking to understand. You see, even before I found out I'm autistic over 40 years ago, I knew that people did things for reasons I didn't immediately understand, and I didn't like it. So I needed to discover what those reasons were. Veracity, remember? I wanted things to be reliable, consistent, and predictable, but I can't have any of that if people keep making choices I can't make sense of. That's where most of those questions come from. A 100% bona fide desire to fit in better and not be noticed. If I can understand your reasoning for doing the thing, maybe I'll choose to do the thing in future. But even if not, I'll at least understand why you do the thing, and I can factor that into my predictions going forward. Then you'll get no more questions from me, and I'll feel a little bit better having something new to plot on my mental map of how the world works. When I ask some people why they did something, or why I should do something their way, they don't seem to hear the question. They hear some kind of challenge. Because they don't often get asked the kind of questions I ask. They're taken off guard. They instinctively try to read between the lines of the questions, even though there's nothing written there. So they make up whatever feels most plausible to them. What that will be depends on their personalities, their self-esteem, and their confidence in what they were doing or saying. I've not exactly kept count, but I can pretty confidently say that one generic question has got me into more trouble than any other. It tripped me up with my parents, in school, in social and formal situations, with employers, medics, people at the council. The list is practically endless, and the trouble it's caused has ranged from embarrassment and mild rebuke right up to losing my job. So I'll use it to illustrate how bad reactions to a question sometimes tap into insecurities folks would rather we didn't know about. Things they think nobody's aware of until we ask them a question that might expose them. I've mentioned it before. Why did you do that?
Who does he think he is, asking me why I did the thing? What gives him the right? I don't have to justify myself to him. It was my decision to make, and for better or worse, I did what anyone in my position would have done. Well, he can go swivel if he thinks I'm explaining myself to the likes of him.
Stop asking questions you don't want the answers to. When you're in my position, you'll know well enough. That's insecurity about their position or their social status that we've bricked. As a rule, the worse someone reacts to their authority being challenged, the less secure they feel in their position, whether that be something formal or social. Like being the third most popular girl in class. You don't let the fourth most popular question you and get away with it if you think there's a chance she may usurp you. So you bite back, undermine her before she does it to you. They may even think that we're probing them for information in an effort to usurp them. Find out the inside secrets of their success, then bam, shaft them and replace them. Let's try another. Why did you do that?
What does he care why I did the thing? Does he think he can do better or something? Put him in my shoes and see if he'd cope as well as I do. He hasn't got a clue how hard it is being me with all the things I have to do. I take it all and still manage, only for this cheeky sod to question me. Not on my watch.
Never you mind. Stay in your lane and stick to what you know best. Now we're hitting the competence nerve. This is someone who thinks we're asking them questions because we're about to tell them they did the thing wrong or maybe that they shouldn't have done it. They don't lack confidence in their right or their justification for doing the thing, but they're really not sure they're doing the thing the right way, in the right order, or maybe in the right circumstances, and they really don't want to be called out on it. Okay, one more. Why did you do that?
Why is he asking me why I do the thing? Who asks questions like that? Who even thinks about such things? But now he's asking me something I can't answer, and it's making me feel a bit small and stupid, because I never thought to ask. Now I think about it, that does sound kind of lame. Why have I carried on doing this without ever asking why I'm doing it like this, or doing it at all? Am I shallow or something?
Stop asking stupid questions and mind your own business. This might be the most common cause of instant bad reactions to autistic questions. The "I don't know and that makes me feel dumb" reaction. Our question points out their own failing, naivety, or lack of curiosity. They realise that they really should know the answer, but they've never bothered to find out for themselves. Sometimes it might tie in with doubts about their position too. Maybe their lack of knowledge suggests they've been kept out of a privileged loop they think they should be in on. But either way, our question feels like an attack on them because we've made them feel self-conscious about their ignorance. There are numerous ways autistic questions can be misinterpreted, which is one of the reasons we can be so long-winded when we're asked to explain something. Why we pepper things with relatable examples and restate things in different ways, like I've just done 3 times in this sentence. A great deal of the cognitive effort I put into my communication is a conscious level monitoring of the person I'm talking to. I'm watching their body language and expression, but in particular, I'm listening for the tiny shifts in vocal tone, volume, timbre and rhythm that tell me how they're responding emotionally to my words, whether they're with me and following me, whether there's trust between us. The extra busy work that makes social engagement really tiring for autistic folks. I'm in a constant dialogue with myself to find the right words to match someone's mood and expectations of me so that I can ask questions when I need to without any awkward confrontation. I try to establish where they may feel threatened so I can avoid pressing those buttons or, if needs be, find a way of getting round blockages without directly asking questions. Is it perfect? Is it bell curves? But it does give me a measure of protection, of prevention, to make life a little easier and safer. But it works better the more I get to know someone. And strangers is pretty hit and miss. Most people I speak to on a regular basis know I'm autistic now, and they know what to expect from me, at least to some degree. It shields me from a lot of the potential for questions gone wrong, but not completely. I do still end up explaining myself more than I'd like to, but that's to be expected. Quid pro quo. If I'm hoping for people to answer my questions, which they may find awkward or a little odd, I've got to expect some unwieldy questions in return. I'll explain my mind if you'll explain yours, I guess. At least I'm given the opportunity to explain now, which is more than I can say for how it goes with a lot of strangers. There's not much we can do to prevent people we don't know from getting the wrong end of the stick. Even those of us who live solitary lives still have to deal with strangers from time to time. Government officials, doctors, landlords, housing associations, police, the guy from the insurance company. All sorts of possibilities of having to interact with people who don't know we're autistic. People who aren't aware that we have to ask awkward questions sometimes before we can complete seemingly simple tasks. These days, I'm more likely to just come out with it and see what happens, but I wouldn't recommend that to everyone. Where I live in the south of England, social expectations are such that people don't tend to react badly when I tell them I'm autistic, but not everyone can expect the same where they live. I'm also in the process of conducting my own little social experiment in that regard too, so I have incentive. But if I ask someone a clarifying question and I see the signals that they're feeling threatened or in some other way misunderstanding me, I'll say something like, "Sorry if my question sounds out of place. I'm autistic, so I need a bit more information before I can make sense of things, so do bear with me for a bit." And then I'll usually try to rephrase the question, clarify the question, or go back a step and build some context, all the while trying to judge whether I'm improving things or making them worse. My success rate is definitely better than 50%, but it's certainly not 100% either. I'm getting there, slowly. Maybe by the time I get to about 100 or so, I might have got the hang of it. Questions being misunderstood is par for the course for any autist who's trying to make a living or even just survive in the modern world, and they'll remain so whilst people like us are still treated as anomalies rather than accommodated for. 10 years ago, I hardly told anybody that I'm autistic. Yet now I feel quite comfortable telling people why it is that they might find me a little odd, if I feel it's worth doing so. Most folks don't have much of an idea what to do with the information, but they're generally receptive when I explain why I told them, usually to give my unexpected questions some context. Maybe, in another 10 years, I'll tell someone I'm autistic and they'll think, "Ah, that must be why he asked me that weird-sounding question. He's autistic, so he understands things differently and needs some context." Will there ever come a day when I don't even have to point out I'm autistic or tell people what to expect? If that day ever comes, then my job will be done, because it would mean that autistic people will be recognised and respected for who we are and what we offer to the world, rather than getting into trouble for asking inconvenient questions. So, fingers crossed, eh? Thank you for indulging me on that tea-time journey through backfiring autistic questions. Whilst it presents its own logistical challenges, I do enjoy the more intimate feel of these tea times, so I'm confident they're going to remain a permanent feature. I get the odd message or comment from viewers telling me they've missed videos or they've not seen me on YouTube for a while when I've been producing regular content, and there's no doubt the ever-changing YouTube algorithm plays a part in that. Apart from the subscribing and notification bell thing, you could sign up as a free patron on my Patreon and get an email from me with a link when I post new videos on YouTube, plus the odd free extra from time to time. Paid patrons also get an extra video every week on a Wednesday and the warm, fuzzy feeling of knowing I wouldn't and indeed couldn't be doing this without their support. And if you feel your timeline is being clogged up with too many YouTube shorts, so you're not seeing the long-form content you're looking for, you can always hit the 3 dots next to that row of shorts on your desktop or mobile app and tell it you want to see less shorts for a few days. In the next couple of weeks, I'm planning the first of what might turn out to be a few videos summing up the discussion we've been having in comments and email about autism and competition. Loads of you have got involved and shared your thoughts on competition and how it's affected your lives and your progress. You've been really forthcoming and wonderfully honest, which I'm immeasurably grateful for. Admittedly, the discussion has been a little bit one-sided because I've not got the time or the spoons to reply to everyone, but the input I've received has been tremendous and it's building a really detailed picture. If you want to share any interesting or amusing stories of questions backfiring on you in the comments, then please do. The more the merrier. Even if I don't reply, every comment gets read, and as plenty of you have noticed thanks to changes on screen, They do make a difference. You can get in touch directly via the email address in the description, along with links to Ko-fi and Patreon if you can afford to help me pay my bills. Anyway, that's all for this week. And whilst it's been a pleasure as always, I need to get the kettle on and see to my cat Orla, who's over there trying to attract my attention for something. So, I'm Quinn, and I'm autistic. Thank you for watching. Okay, Orla, I'm coming.